shuttle has cleared the tower.
Welcome, everyone, to the second race of the Big Data Beards virtual race to Splunk's .conf 20. Today's race is sponsored by our friends at Splunk, and we travel virtually, of course, to Splunk's backyard, a racetrack often referred to as the home track for the team at Splunk, and that's Laguna Seca. And we're pleased to have none other than Doug Merritt, CEO of Splunk, to join us to kick off this series and this race in the virtual race to .conf. Doug, welcome to the virtual race. You absolutely look the part today. Look at you.
Thank you, Corey. It's very good to be here, and I'm happy that I serendipitously wore my McLaren sweatshirt today. So,
well, we're matching. I'm a big fan. They were kind enough to share the wealth. That's awesome. Well, 2020 has been a crazy year for everybody. It's accelerated some things that have been great in some ways, but it's been challenging in many others. I'm curious, from your perspective, what has it been like to lead a company like Splunk through this challenging time?
Yeah, unparalleled, unprecedented, unique, every adjective you could think of. I think, like so many of you out there, I don't think I've ever worked harder. The boundaries between work and home life just seem to completely blow up, and are still blown up. Zoom and web conferencing are awesome, but they also make you completely accessible. I've been incredibly proud of the team. The people just have put their heads down, and in a year where there could be lots of excuses for delivery, and everyone has just beyond risen to the occasion. And like you said, there's a lot of loss and a lot of difficulty, and then a lot of opening up of brand new possibilities. And I think this has definitely changed so many people's perspective on almost everything that we do. How do you serve customers when you can't go on site? How do you sell to customers? How do you drive pipeline? How do you have teams that are distributed actually work closely together? How do you maintain productivity while kids and dogs are running into the room? So I think a lot of great lessons for everybody that I think will last us for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I've heard you talk a lot lately about this concept of the data age, and I'd be curious, if you don't mind, explaining what that means to you and why it's such a kind of a rallying call these days.
Yeah, obviously it's Splunk, and I think me personally believe deeply in the power of data. How do you marry our story processing capability, which humans are great at doing, with information, fact, and true opportunity to make sure that you have as much decision-making capability as possible to guide your company, your family, your organization forward. As we digitize, and everything really, really is becoming connected, and we see it happening much more quickly with COVID, the opportunity for real-time sense and respond, for capturing the streaming data and the data at rest in ways never done before, so that you can move into the data age in the proper way, which is don't leave any data unturned. We have a true neural network, virtual neural network around us every second right now. And the data age is really helping people be aware of all the data that exists, the infinite uses for the data, and the technology and people and tools that you can throw at the problem, so that we can all serve our customers better, spend money more wisely, innovate more effectively, provide more humanitarian services more intelligently. It literally, I think, covers every nook and cranny of the globe.
Absolutely. Now, to celebrate all the things that Splunk is doing to help organizations achieve the value from extracting value from data, we've got .conf just around the corner. That's what we're virtually racing to. And while .conf this year is going to look a little bit different as a virtual conference, it's always something very special for a lot of us. But I'm curious, from your perspective as CEO, this has to be a conference that sort of carries some extra weight and it's got some more depth. So what's this conf going to mean to you, and what are you most excited about seeing in this new context?
Yeah, I am incredibly excited about this .conf, because I think the ability for us to extend a whole bunch of opportunities to all of you, now that we can kind of warp time and space and do so much virtually, provides a whole new landscape for what .conf can be. Who can we bring to you, and how can you go? What kind of in-depth sessions can you have when it's a true many-to-many environment that anybody can tap into? The piece that I think we will all miss, and certainly that I will miss, is all the physical interaction. I literally am going through pre-withdrawal syndrome of not being able to physically be there for awards, for handshakes, for the search party.
Yeah, it's going to be a different year, but it's going to be a great one. Now, I'm curious though. We are racing, and today's race is at Laguna Seca. And while we are going virtual, I know I've actually had a chance to join some of the Splunkers on a day at Laguna Seca in real life. But I'm curious, do you have any personal experience, either in real life or virtual, around Laguna Seca that you might share?
I do. In one of the Splunk track days, I brought my Porsche Panamera, which I had back then, and just had an absolute blast at Laguna Seca. The corkscrew is as scary, but then is awesome once you feel comfortable with it, as everybody says. And it's a beautiful track, a interesting and tough course, and I'm excited to try it out virtually and see what it's like.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're going to see a lot of action in that corkscrew today with 15 cars that are high powered and ready to race. Well, Doug, it's time to go racing. It's time to turn those high powered cars loose on the track. Today's race is at Laguna Seca. Would you please do us the honors?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Splunk or start your engines.
To the beautiful Laguna Seca racetrack in Northern California for today's number 2 race of the Big Data Beards virtual race to .conf, sponsored by our friends at Splunk. And there you see the starting grid as they've qualified. We've got McLaren and Splunk leading up, with Tom West representing the Big Data Beards in the 3rd spot. The rest of us Big Data Beards we were excited to make it in the top 10. Brett, what do you think the keys for the race today are going to be?
Yeah, Corey. I mean, first of all, yesterday was just an amazing race. A lot of competition. All the drivers left it right on the road there. So I'm excited to see how everyone rebounds or, executes today. I think the biggest thing is that we're trading in the grass of Indy to a very fine sand gravel outskirt of the track. And as we saw yesterday, with a lot of cars spinning out and having trouble staying on the road, I think the biggest thing is controlling your car through getting off the track and hitting into that gravel. If you can do that, if you can lessen the bumps and the hits, and as always, cross the finish line first, I think you're going to do just fine.
Absolutely. And right there, we see a big mix-up in the first lap under caution behind the pace car. We had some folks getting bumped off the track. That is going to shake up the starting grid. You see Kyle coming back on track, trying to get back in position. In this first lap behind the pace car, remember, everybody bunches up and you stay in position where you qualified. So we're going to see if the back of the pack actually is able to get back in the order. Now, today's race is at Laguna Seca, as we talked about, and it is an exciting one. There are some crazy turns we'll talk about, but the one that is most important is the corkscrew, and I expect that we see a lot of action there.
Yeah, Corey, I mean, not only is it just 2 sharp turns, but on a decline, I mean, you can't, how do you prepare for that?
Absolutely. Well, the wild thing is it's blind, so if you don't know it, it is super scary the first couple times you come through it. And I think, as Doug Merritt mentioned in the opening, it is an exciting one once you get to know it, and if you can figure out how to master it, and you're seeing it there, a downhill blind, hard right-hand turn. It'll be interesting. I think some cars will go off there, and we'll see if the cars survive it, if they can slide off the track. Now,
Yeah, Corey, I think that's definitely going to be the spot where we thin the herd, so to speak, as far as who's actually going to be a competitor and who's going to be a pretender today in the race.
Well, the pace car is off, and this is Splunk's home track. It is in the backyard of their corporate offices, often the home of their Customer Appreciation Day racetrack time. But we're going to see the race here as McLaren, again, bunches up the crowd, gets everybody ready to start to go down that front straightaway right into the Andretti hairpin. Now, beware, this is where the action happens. This is where you can lose the race in this first corner as they jockey for position and try to get lined up. There you go, Jason Stein taking the outside line, trying to get aggressive. Tom West holding position there on the inside. It's going to be an exciting race. We've got, again, the team from McLaren fielding some great folks from their esports team. Oh, we see Tom West, who was in the third position, going off in that, coming out of turn 2, going into turn 3. That's going to be tough. He hates to see losing that third position.
Yeah, Corey, but he did manage to recover very quickly and get back on that track and not lose too much of a pole position.
Absolutely. Now, I do want to call attention that today we've got an awesome podcast to go with this awesome race. We've got Kia Benia. He's the VP of IT Markets at Splunk, and he's going to be actually one of those folks leading some of the keynote super sessions at .conf. But we get a little preview from him here today to talk about IT and how Splunk is powering AI ops for next generation IT. But today's, we're going to have some fun guests as well for our interviews. As you've seen in the previous sessions, today's Juliana Vida, friend of the Big Data Beard, is going to join us again. And there you can see some awesome racing action for those top 5 spots. Love seeing all that action. Oh, we just lost the aero car, goes off. So does the Red River. We've got a lot of action there. See, that sandy soil slows people down when they're coming back on track. Almost like you need some sand tires out there.
Yeah, do they have sand tires out there?
Hey Corey, I'm not too happy about that turn, so I wanted to take a look at the data and see what I could come up with as to how to make my lap times a bit quicker and how to handle that turn a bit better. So let's take a look in at our Splunk dashboard and see what exactly Westy's doing to where he's getting in and out of that turn quicker. I went ahead and pulled up our dashboards and selected the speed here, and you can see where Westy is shaving speed quite a bit quicker than me, and I think that's able to make him get out of that turn much faster. Let's take a look at the brakes and see what's happening there. Okay, I'm going to zoom in on the brakes over here as well, and we'll see what's going on. Okay, I'm going to zoom in on the brakes over here. Let's see what's going on around that turn. You can see where Westy's punching the brakes quite a bit before me, and then I seem to be feathering the brakes on the back end. I think what I need to do is be a bit more aggressive on the braking coming into that turn here, such as what he's showing here. Let's take a look at the throttle and see how he's going there. Okay, let's go ahead and load in the last turn of that throttle, and you can see where I'm actively just giving it all she's got there at the end, and Westy seems to be able to lightly punch the throttle and view it as necessary. So what I need to do is be a bit more aggressive on my braking on the back end or on the front end, and then be a bit more light on the gas on the back end. Let's see what that'll do for me later on in this race. Back to you all.
Well, thanks, Kyle. That's really what it's all about, is using the data from these racing experiences to make ourselves better, and certainly wish you the best in doing so. That's really what it's all about for you too, Brett, right?
Yeah, I mean, anytime that we can use data to get even just a little bit more of an edge over the competition, that's how we get better, and hopefully we win the race.
Absolutely. Well, I do want to call attention to some of the absolutely beautiful paint jobs on these cars. iRacing has this really great capability to integrate with third-party or custom-designed paints where you can create your own, or there's a great application called tradingpaints.com that actually allows you to design them in a simple, easy-to-use interface and then upload those to Go Racing.
Yeah, an example of some great cars there. You just saw Kyle Prinz with his beautiful McLaren, and then my Freedom car, the BMW, that just screams red, white, and blue.
Absolutely. Well, I do love the supporting of our great country, but we've got a global team here. Kyle with the bright colors representing the team in Australia. And look at those McLarens throwing flames as they go through the corners. Too cool. Now, we did get word that McLaren 2 was piloted by a racer over in Poland that's having some thunderstorms and was not able to actually get connectivity to get back into the race. So that's why you saw them qualify so low and then actually not join the race completely. And folks, that's really one of those challenges with technology. This is a virtual sim experience. You got to have quality bandwidth to stay in the race. And certainly that's it's too bad to see him not be able to get some points in this racing series.
Yeah, Corey, I actually myself had to upgrade my my Wi-Fi, and then I chose to go Ethernet instead of going Wi-Fi, just to make sure that my bandwidth was always consistent to give me an edge.
Absolutely. Well, we're 4 laps in, and we're already seeing the leaders get into lap traffic. That just shows you how fast some of these drivers really are, and hopefully everybody's having a good time. But now it's time to go check in with one of our good friends from the Big Data Beard that is always a good time to talk with.
Thanks, Corey. I'm here with Juliana Vida, who's Splunk's Chief Technical Advisor for the public sector at Splunk, and a really good friend of the Big Data Beard team. And Juliana, it's great to have you back with us again this year. How are you doing?
Well, I was doing great until I put on this fake beard to try to impress you, and it's so itchy and gross. I don't know how you guys do it. So I'm just
But it's so luscious and full and looks so good.
Well, thank you very much. Of course, it looks exactly like the picture on the front of the packaging. So I'm just gonna get rid of that.
I guess I'll take this one off too then.
Oh, good luck. Good luck.
Yeah. No, not as simple. Not as simple.
Okay.
Well,
All
we got to hear some great things from you last year on the Big Data Beard road trip to conf, but now we're into 2020. And first, I'm really interested in hearing just, how is Splunk enabling success for the public sector leaders and helping them accomplish their mission?
Well, of course, it's a great question. There's nothing like supporting the public sector. I mean, it feels good to be helping them execute their missions, accelerate their missions, because those missions affect all of us in a lot of different ways. And so when we help them, they help all of you. They help all the citizens. So even though it's a pandemic and that's the unfortunate circumstance that caused it, what has been nice to see and cool to see is a lot of organizations accelerate plans that they already had in place to modernize, or maybe we'll get to that in 2 years. And now it's like, okay, it's front and center. We have to do it right now. Yeah. But we've seen a lot of that mission acceleration across the public sector. For us includes all the federal government, including the Department of Defense, the intelligence community, plus all state and local and higher ed. So there's all kinds of unique use cases that we're seeing. And again, a lot of acceleration, but it's not across the board. There are some parts of the public sector that are really struggling. Higher education comes to mind, because if you don't have children in school, or you aren't up until, including college, or you're not in school yourself, certainly everyone knows someone who is struggling with that. And there's a lot of challenges with how do we reopen campus? How do we make students and faculty safe and things like that? So they have unique challenges, but it's just been, again, nice to walk in and have something that can help those organizations, for example, support their remote workforce. I mean, that's an obvious one. Most government agencies, public sector agencies, have had small portions of their workforce perhaps working off-site, but the majority were on-site. And now, 90%, I made that number up. Many organizations went straight to remote work, just like you did, just like me. And just to be able to help them monitor, do employees have the support they need? Do they have network connectivity? Do we need to buy more hardware, buy more software, get insight into how they're using their time and being productive? That's been the most rewarding thing that I've seen, us help the public sector, because that remote workforce, that's brand new for a lot of people. That is a new motion. And having the technology to back them up, to help them, is a good feeling.
Yeah, and when you think of accelerating of use cases and how 2020 with this different look and feel and how the pandemic has influenced so much, I think workforce transformation is a major one, and probably the public sector is one of those areas that was probably further behind than most. So how is Splunk really helping the public sector, helping the organizations that make up the public sector embrace and excel and really adhere to being able to have a resilient workforce that works remotely?
I love the workforce questions. I always try to go to the people and culture issues. It's very important and often overlooked. But what I think the big takeaway is that technology has broken some assumptions and paradigms that were just in place for a long time. Well, our workforce can't possibly be productive when they're not sitting in their desk from 8 to 5 or 7 to 9 or whatever crazy hours they work. They must be on site. They must be here inside our corporate network, or inside our protected perimeter. And now, boom, the world changed and everyone went home, and the world didn't stop spinning on its axis. And now those old assumptions of how people are most productive and what kind of environment they have to be in to be a part of the workforce, they've been blown out of the water. Now, there are some portions that if you work in a SCIF, a classified information environment, or you work on a factory floor or something like that, there's work that has to be done on site. But I think we've learned that this thing that we always thought was true about workers, particularly in the public sector, having to be in the office is just not true anymore. And but that's hard. That's hard to change people's mind and behavior. And we're already starting to see some companies and organizations are going back to their old way of working. They're bringing people back to the office, but it's not going to be without some pushback, because people have now learned, the workers have learned how it is to have flexibility and maybe not have that commute that was taking up a lot of their time. Not that everyone loves working from home with all of their kids and all of their spouse and everyone and their partner working from home too. But I think the flexibility that it gave to a lot of people is going to be a major factor in where they decide to work in the future. So empowering the workforce to manage their day and get some time back in their lives, I think has been a really nice outcome of this horrible pandemic that forced that change.
Yeah, but there's also inherently some challenges with the remote workforce, especially from a security perspective, and even just maintaining the infrastructure that supports this remote workforce, right? Like, how many more VDIs do you have? So what's Splunk doing to help support those challenges and help provide the tools to mitigate some of those risks?
Yeah. Well, there was a concept that was already brewing in the federal government for a while, but now has become front and center and everyone's paying attention. And it's a new model or a new methodology for managing risk, and it's called zero trust. Basically, the old thinking was, we have this perimeter, and when my employee authenticates into the corporate network or the organization's network, once they're inside that perimeter, they're safe. They are trusted, and they can go to different applications, and they can maybe bring devices into the environment because we've already authenticated them once, and now we know they're a good guy. Well, that thinking is now being overtaken by this zero trust model, which is every person should not be trusted. There should be minimal trust. It's called zero trust, but really it's minimal trust as a person or a device or a machine moves around and creates different connections inside what used to be the perimeter. It's a great concept, but it requires a lot of analytics. It requires continuous monitoring. It requires automation and orchestration of certain activities within the perimeter or within the new environment. It also requires someone to be making sure that the policies are adhered to and that there's compliance and all of these topics that aren't new on their own. But when you think of them in an ecosystem of, we have to constantly be testing users and endpoints to make sure that one bad actor doesn't move too far around inside the environment, that's the new concept. And so to your point, with telework or remote work or whatever, work from home, with family members joining the network, maybe people's cybersecurity, spidey senses aren't that tuned anymore. Maybe they're looking for whatever shortcut they can use to get logged on and get their child working on remote, their distance learning. I would imagine that a lot of cybersecurity behavior has probably slipped to the, off people's plates. And so now this concept of zero trust is even more important. And Splunk is, zero trust is not a tool or a product. Splunk is certainly not the only vendor in the space that can support capability to deliver zero trust or to execute on zero trust. But we certainly do have the capabilities to do quite a bit of the analytics that's required, and then working with our partners as we always do, and interacting with other vendors and other tools to help our customers get the output or the outcome that they want. That's where we're starting to take a bigger foothold with zero trust.
Yeah, and that's becoming ever more important, especially as we get into the next evolution of what this workforce looks like. So, Juliana, we're going to hear a little bit more from you in a little bit, but let's hand it back to Corey and check in on the race. Back to you, Corey.
Thanks, Brett. That is always fun to check in with Juliana, and I love her attitude and fun, showing up with the beard in style. But you know what? She found out the beard's just not for everybody. But while we were away, there was a change in the lead. We actually saw that McLaren 1 car get held up by some lap traffic coming out of the Andretti hairpin. And oh my goodness, there we see the McLaren 1 car getting clipped by a car that had a little bit of damage, and Intel was having a hard time maintaining their line. And that McLaren car looks like it may be out of the race. That was a tough hit.
Oh, Corey, that is just a devastating blow to the McLaren team. You hate to see something like that happen, especially when you have the car in the lead lap vying for first place, get hit and caught up in lap traffic.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, you saw that Intel car had some damage, was having a hard time holding their steering. That happens because, again, we've talked about the physics engine in this racing platform. It is very realistic. If you get damage, the car's handling absolutely changes. And here, the Intel car trying to limp around to get back to the pit road, just not able to do so. And there gets clipped by McLaren. So hate to see McLaren out.
Yeah, you can even see the driver just struggling with that steering wheel, going left to right just to try and maintain some semblance of control.
Well, let's go check in with our buddy Kyle to find out a little bit more about how we're getting the data out of iRacing to get it into Splunk.
Welcome to today's Tech Overview, where we take a behind-the-scenes look at the technologies that make this race possible. Today we'll be taking a look at the iRacing SDK, which helped us get data out of the simulation platform and into Splunk. Special thank you to our sponsor, Splunk. Let's take a dive in. Now, obviously, we wanted to pull the data out of this iRacing platform. However, the data was actually stored in unique bin files just for a little bit, so we tried to pull the data out of that. However, that data was not human readable. It was really tricky to pull that values out of that. So we took a look at the open source community, and thankfully, we found a coder named Kudu who was building a Python SDK for iRacing. Now, there are other SDKs available from iRacing or for iRacing. However, this one is built upon Python, and that's what we're comfortable with here at the team. So we dove right into this, and what we realized is that it's an actually pretty outstanding SDK for us. It is installable via pip. It has a couple dependencies. However, the amount of information that we were able to pull out of this was absolutely incredible. There's actually over 268 different variables that we can pull out of this. And it is astounding and overwhelming what we saw with that first. What's great about it is that Kudu actually also provides the units of measurements that we need to understand what this data is. So whether it's air pressure, it's actually in a measurement that is understandable rather than having to take a guess whether that's a imperial or a metric conversion. Same for speed and distance. We understood the variables right there, so it was really easy to create a key value pair from there. Now, while this data is really interesting, we came to the question of how do we store this data and how do we refresh that data? So what we did was we created a Python dictionary where we had an empty set of key value pairs. So obviously we knew the key, we need to pull what that value was. So we created a large dictionary around that. Now, obviously this thing is huge. It's going to take a little bit of time to compute, and within racing, every microsecond counts. So what we did was we took a look at how often we needed that data sampled out of the iRacing platform. And we categorized it based upon what it pertained to. So whether it was camera work, that was stored in a camera dictionary. Whether it was compute information, that was stored in a compute dictionary. Environmentals, race information itself, as well as track, vehicle information. So whether we want to pull in brake pressure, tire wear, speed, anything like that. And then from there, we were able to start to sample those at different speeds. Because obviously we want to know more about speed, and we want to get a sample of that data more often than we do, say, the camera angle or the weather. Now we'll dive into that Python script some more on our next race, but for now, we'll send it back to you, team.
Thanks, Kyle. That is super interesting to see all the sources of data that we can get from the iRacing SDK. And look here, we've got some action. Two of the BMWs, Brett and you and I both out there in the sand. Looks like you were struggling to get back on the track, and you may have some damage. Oh, clearly got some damage on the car. Hard to control it there. I wonder, let's go back and see what exactly caused all that mess coming out of that the corkscrew. There you can see I'm entering the corkscrew coming down to that right-hand corner. Looks like we've got some lap traffic in that Splunk IT car, trying to make it through this sweeping left-hander. Oh, and the Splunk car turns in. Oh, and clips me.
Oh, you just wanted to join me on the beach, Corey. I see how it is.
Absolutely. That sand looks super comfortable, but luckily, looks like we're going to be able to maintain those positions because my car there is in third place. So the next car behind me is actually a full lap down. Oh, you can see what a mess Well, I wonder if that damage is going to hit me and cause me to slow down in the track.
Yeah, Corey, and I think the thing we need to look at now going into the latter part of this race is incident points and the effect that's going to cause on pole positions and who's actually going to win.
Absolutely. Well, incident points do collect throughout the race as you bump or hit other drivers, and you can be penalized and sent back to the pits to serve a penalty if you get too many of those. And certainly you can lose some time on the track. But before we get to any more racing action, we're going to check back in with Brett and Juliana for the second half of their interview.
Thanks, Corey. We're back to Juliana to hear more about what Splunk is doing in the public sector to help drive organizations that are in this ever-changing world from a workforce perspective, from a technology perspective. And Juliana, before we cut earlier, you were talking about zero trust and obviously security and ensuring that there are no bad actors and that the data is at the utmost priority as it pertains to security. There's this thing called cloud, and obviously cloud is an operating model, but more organizations are embracing cloud and the public cloud model. I feel like in the public sector, though, that the evolution or the embracing of that has been a little bit slower. The adoption's been a little bit slower. What are your thoughts, and is that still the case?
Well, when you talk about cloud, yes, I would say the public sector certainly has been slower to adopt than most commercial companies. But one thing that has, again, a good byproduct of this pandemic is that what we're finding out is that there were more organizations in the public sector that had already started moving some workloads to the cloud. Maybe they weren't all in, but they were starting to see some value. And when the pandemic hit and workforce went remote and requests for citizen services went up, more people were applying for small business loans, more people were applying for unemployment benefits, for example. Those state and local governments and federal agencies that had some of those workloads in the cloud were able to deliver. They were able to do that very quickly. And there was this very almost instantaneous proof of concept that, oh, wow, this cloud investment was really a smart decision. That we can actually deliver what citizens need and in a fast way, the way that citizens are expecting it and the way that they deserve. So that happened, but then the other thing that happened was federal government leaders, public sector leaders, were talking about that. They would say publicly, hey, we're so glad that we made these investments in cloud because it allowed us to support our workforce. It went from something that public sector leaders often aren't that open about sharing which technologies they're using or for just a variety of reasons. There are reasons that they don't want to talk. But that shifted too, to where they wanted to share. They wanted to say, hey, look, all of you, my peers, this worked for us. It can work for you. And so that was a great thing to see. It's a nice thing that we continue to see, that there's open dialogue about the value proposition of commercial cloud, whatever hybrid environment that organizations have, that before was not really as widely talked about or openly talked about it as it is now. So now this is another barrier that we've jumped over, this barrier of, we're the public sector. We can't, trust commercial companies with our data. Well, now there's so many adopters that have already done it and they're talking about their success that others are coming. Now they're coming to the fold and they've learned that maybe some of these assumptions they had about cloud and what negative things it might bring to their environment are no longer really the center of the conversation, which is good.
No, and I think you're absolutely right, because this, I don't want to say first wave, but the pandemic obviously caused people to have to very quickly adopt. But the next time something causes people to have to scale resources, the cloud needs to be there. That's already been improved at that point. So that's very interesting. Right. Now, when we think about just application of technology and how public sector organizations are using analytics, what are some examples that you want to share and success stories where Splunk has helped organizations become successful?
Yeah, I would say the Health and Human Services, any kind of healthcare organization, they have readily adopted new ways of testing and new ways of sharing those test results and turning testing into predictive analytics so that they can, refine their testing procedures or deliver things more quickly to people that need healthcare, for example. There's one particular case in the state of Texas, and that's Tarrant County. And Tarrant County, early in the pandemic, became a test bed for a pilot program it was a consortium of technology companies. It was Splunk and others that developed an online screening tool, that citizens could use for themselves. And now those are pretty widespread, so maybe that's not as big of news, but they were early on in the process. So I, as a citizen in this county, could go on and answer the questions about, have I traveled and am I feeling sick, and all the things that we're all now used to answering pretty much anytime we go to a restaurant.
All the time, yep.
All the time. But, back in March and April, that wasn't true for all of us yet. So Tarrant County in Texas really was an early adopter in, okay, we are going to take advantage of these technology capabilities that companies like Splunk were making available, often for free at first, for a trial period, and we're going to deliver that to our citizens. And they did, and they started to just realize how rich that data could be, anonymized. It wasn't to find out what certain people were doing or what their health information was, but they just started doing what people that love Splunk do, and that was getting more inquisitive about what other questions can we answer, what other ways can we use this data. And so that was a really good news story coming out of the state of Texas.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like now you have a fairly rich data set that early on could help, be more proactive or help build more proactive models for other organizations to kind of figure out what are the actual symptoms, which ones are more prevalent than others, and then feed that back in. That's really exciting.
Exactly.
So .conf is right around the corner. We're just days away. What are you most excited about?
Well, I have to say, I'm actually involved in several sessions, and I'm pretty excited the playback of some of those. One of them is a cybersecurity and government session. Another one is a veterans panel. I think we've done a great job at Splunk with not only just being an employer that wants veterans and does outreach, but also having these panels where we talk to military folks who maybe haven't transitioned yet or are transitioning, and we share with them just, what their consideration should be, where they can get free training. We have the free training for veterans at through Splunk for Good, and other partners that we work with, like the SkillBridge and Higher Military Organization, that are really rich resources of this veteran talent that is so, I just think it's still an untapped resource and an unrecognized resource. But Splunk has been a leader in bringing those veterans into technology and sharing with them all the great opportunities that lie in wait for them after they take off the uniform and go work in the public sector or in the private sector. So those are two. And then, anything about the McLaren, that's just that's really cool. And I have to be honest, I'm not a huge race car fan, but you can't not look at those cars and think that they look really sexy and cool. And then when you think about them as like being splunked and all that, I just really, I know there's some surprises waiting and some really cool things that we're going to see in terms of how McLaren is using Splunk, and I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, and continue to stay tuned to the virtual Race to Conf, because we have McLaren be a part of our races as well, and they're talking about how they're using the data for their esports also. So it is pretty cool, and I got to drive the iRacing simulator of the McLaren, and even if that's like 0.0001% accurate, like it's pretty cool. So I'm a fan. And then also, just as a veteran who have used the Splunk for Good veterans training, I highly recommend anyone that has put on the uniform to check it out. It is awesome, great training, and it really does set you up. So thank you on behalf of veterans for that as well. I will say, go Army, beat Navy.
You're the host. You can say whatever you want.
I know, and I can edit whatever I want as well. Now, Juliana, it's been so great to have you back with the Big Data Beard team. You are always so awesome to talk to and hear all the great stories and the passion around the people and the process. And just thank you. We look forward to having you on again. But Corey, I'm going to send it back to you for the conclusion of the race.
Well, thanks, Brett and Juliana. Always good to catch up, and looking forward to hearing Juliana and the team at .conf. And if you haven't signed up yet, make sure you're going to conf.splunk.com, signing up for this year's virtual .conf, which is free to join for anybody around the world. Obviously, the U.S. Sessions are going to be on Tuesday and Wednesday, the 20th and 21st, while the EMEA and APJ 21st and 22nd. Be sure you check out all those great sessions and sign up at conf.com. Now, looking at the leaderboard here in the race in action, looks like the first three positions are pretty tight there, pretty well sewn up. Buttercup has got a really nice gap on Westy there in second place of about a minute, while Corey is down a full lap from the leaders.
Yeah, Corey, but I think the name of the game is who's going to get the 4 through 10, right? As we talked about earlier, pole position for the entire series is extremely important. I'm really interested to see how the Aero, the Splunk SFX, and Kyle do to get that into the top 5.
Absolutely. Consistency is key. This is not about a single race win. It's about winning the overall racing series, and you certainly want to keep in the battle. We know we've had some cars that had some damage that really just put them out, not able to complete the race, and that does happen from time to time, but thankfully nobody's hurt because this is virtual racing. Now everybody's seen this this Buttercup car. It is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, Corey, so what is a Buttercup? Tell me about that.
It's a great question. So Splunk Buttercup is Splunk's mascot. It actually started back in the early days of the company when one of the engineers was doing great work, but what he was acting as a consultant, and he never really wanted to come on full time. And he told the leaders and the management team, he was like, hey, they asked him, what did he want? What would it take to get him to come on board? And he said, buy me a pony. Well, in all jest, some of the folks actually found one at a toy store, wrapped it up, left it at his desk, and it quickly became named Buttercup, and that just turned into folklore legend at Splunk that has now been adopted. And if you've been to one of the .confs in person in the past, they usually have that 25-foot tall inflatable version, which is not the original. And if you enter a Splunk office, you'll see oftentimes greeted by a beautiful Buttercup wearing a Splunk shirt at the lobby entrance. So that's the story of Buttercup, and I know the team is excited to be driving a beautifully painted Buttercup McLaren.
You know, Corey, I've seen the Buttercup pony at a lot of these events. I never knew the background behind this. That's really interesting.
Absolutely. Well, Buttercup takes the win. It looks like Westy's going to be in second place. And if you're looking at Westy's car, he's got that NHS logo on the front of his McLaren there. And he's really saying thank you to the frontline workers in the National Health Service in the UK. He was involved in a project during the early parts of the pandemic to support their efforts. And he really wanted to make sure that we thanked those frontline workers. And really, we should thank frontline workers everywhere. And Westy's done a great job of helping us really get insights into the data. And as you can see here, Westy's going to come in for a strong second place. Looks like I'm going to be super happy with a third place finish. That's going to help in the points race. Brett doing a little farming. But let's go in and check in with Westy on really what the data tells us about the keys to the race.
Hey everybody, welcome to today's post-race data analysis at Laguna Seca. Today what we wanted to do was to have a look at how we can improve our lap performance using the data that we've captured from the fastest lap. Specifically, what we want to do is to see whether our podium finishers can really tell us anything with their data regarding where we might want to look for clues in the track to where we can make the biggest gains. Laguna Seca has got a very, very famous corner in the corkscrew because of how blind the turn is, how steep the elevation is between the two turns. Quite rightly, it is a very, very challenging turn. And is that really the turn where we can make or break our fastest laps? And from the speed charts that we've got here on the right, where we've got our fastest lap and our podium finishers, we can see how everyone's speed compares for that particular lap, which is lap 6. And specifically where the troughs are, where the racers are going through the different turns. Where we've got this steep trough right here is turn 8, otherwise known as the corkscrew. And what we found is quite interesting is the fact that everyone seems to have the braking point around the same bit, and the speed's not very different for each of our 4 racers as they go through the turn and exit out of it. The speed seems to be again pretty much the same. And actually, if we have a look, we can see that the big differences are in the turn before the corkscrew, the one after the corkscrew, and also this one here, which will be turn 4. As we have a look, and on the map, they look fairly innocent. Some of the least tighter turns that we've got on the tracks, 4, 6, 9, and 10. Which will be right here, 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 and here. But they're where the big differences are. And I find that particularly interesting that a course with so many different technical challenges, it's the ones that you think they're the easiest that are the ones that provide the biggest difference. But that's what we've gone and seen. What have you seen within the data that you think tells a great story? Please let us know in the comments down below. Special thanks today for our race sponsor at Splunk. And this is Westy signing off. Back to you at the studio.
Hey, thanks again, Corey. We are here with the winners of today's race in Laguna Seca. Welcome, everybody, and congrats. How's it feel? See everybody
Awesome.
just feeling great. Yeah.
I see some sweat from the winners there. You guys working hard today or something?
Always.
There was a few shaky bits.
Yeah, that was a bit of a tricky race today. There was quite a few bumps in the roads, quite a few tricky turns, and then hitting that gravel just seemed to be really tricky. Stein, how did it feel to win a race like that, given the difficulty and complexity of the track?
Oh, it feels great, especially when McLaren's participating. No, I think some people know Splunk has hosted many customer events and like employee morale events at Laguna Seca, just high performance driving events. So I've had the privilege of countless numbers of laps at Laguna in my life there in real cars, of which included a McLaren. And it's amazing. So I love that track. I would consider it a home track. But.
How would you think this compares, obviously, virtual racing of Laguna versus doing it, physically at the track?
Well, at the risk of a shameless plug for iRacing, you have to give them a ton of credit because that platform is extremely realistic. I've actually done tests in real life in spec race Miatas and in sim, and I'm within a half a second of my times. So,
Really?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Now, Westy and Corey, you came in second and third, respectively. How'd you guys feel about podiuming today?
I feel awesome. I think it's a great feeling, definitely.
Yeah, I loved it because the last time I was at Laguna in real life, I also was in a spec Miata, and if you can imagine my 6'5", 280-pound body squeezing into a spec Miata, the fact that we saved the viewers that awful view is, I think it's the biggest gift we could give.
At least you could be comfortable for today's win. Yeah.
That's right.
Now, gentlemen, what was the most exciting moment of today's race for each of you? I'm sure there was quite a bit there to be talked about.
I'd have to say battling with, I think it's James from McLaren, just qualified about 4/10 behind, and we had a great battle for the good first half of the race. So he happened to have some bad luck going into turn 2. So it gave me the opportunity to, take the lead, and lap traffic certainly helped with that. But that was a lot of fun.
Good.
And I would definitely say it was turn 2 on the first lap, being hit off the road and then playing chase throughout the rest of the pack, especially catching Corey up. That was that was good fun. Especially every time I'd get close, I'd spin out, and then Corey went and dutifully went. Paid the favor back, so that was but it was good fun. It was it was great to actually focus on someone I could catch, because Jason's just so fast on that track.
Yeah, thanks for that. Somebody I could easily catch. That's who I am for Tom West. At least I know my place in the world. But the thing is that, you know what, it's not always about being the fastest. Sometimes it's about consistency and just being able to, put down laps. And that's really the credit I give. I'm not the fastest guy. You can look at the lap times. Like, I don't run crazy fast. But I try to run really consistent. I try to be risk averse, like pretty defensive on the track, so that, as you get through that crazy lap traffic, trying to think through where they're going to go next. Mostly it was avoiding Brett when he was coming back on track after a slide. And so, I give it I think it was super fun. It was a lot of, like we said, a lot of mishaps on the track for a lot of folks, a lot of banging around, little go-karts, but it was really fun. I honestly didn't see getting a podium finish in this entire series, and I am just super thankful.
Neither did we, Corey, to be honest. We didn't think you would either.
Especially on Laguna Seca. I mean, that's really something to be proud of. Yeah,
it's true.
Yeah, so you say consistency, Corey. I think obviously everyone strives to be consistent, especially with putting down good race times. But with a very broad set of participants today that range in skill, how do you continue to stay consistent when you have people like me and many others, for the record, that are spitting off the track?
Honestly, I think it's really about defensive driving, right? You know your lines, right? As you get time in the seat, and I think as Tomek said in yesterday's broadcast, the way to get better is just a lot of time in seat, and then a lot of time in races, because those in-race scenarios are what really train you on how to, you can go out and run practice laps by yourself on a track and be incredibly fast, but being able to hold a line as you go through a turn with another person or with three people in a turn, and being able to still be at somewhat of a consistent speed and still be able to hold your line, that just takes time, like we said, in the seat in a race. And I've just tried to be super defensive, like try to think, hey, I've slid plenty of times before. How am I likely going to come back on the track when I enter from the right side? And I'm going to try to avoid that from somebody else. So yeah, just defensive driving 101 stuff.
Yeah. Now, the beauty of this being a virtual event is that we have participants from three different continents. So where are you all racing from today?
Well, I'm sitting in the shed quarters of Big Data Beard in Birmingham, Alabama. That's in North America, the continent, and it's about 1 million degrees outside, but it's nice and cool in here.
Same continent for me. Central Oregon, Bend, Oregon is where my McLaren is.
And I'm in the middle of England in a city called Sheffield in Yorkshire. So we've had a nice day, which makes a change. But it's late, it's dark, but it's all good fun.
And Kyle, you're not anywhere close.
No, I'm in the land down under, Australia, and it's I think you can absolutely tell that by the latency in my event collection within Splunk, jumping across the Pacific Ocean, but we can dive into that in some podcasts later.
That's right.
No, I am noticing quite a bit of difference here between each of your setups, and each of you seem to have a little bit of a strategy around there. Kind of, what's your favorite piece of gear that you have, and what do you think kind of helps set you apart within your racing, within your setup?
I'll take that one. I have a dedicated PC, Dell PC, and so I only use it for iRacing. But I went with all of the Fanatec gear, which actually is over in the UK. And so I just wanted a turnkey solution between the actual rig and pedals and everything. And I would say that while there's still some higher end pedals on the market, the pedals make a huge difference with regard to brake feel especially, and the ability to trail brake, which is obviously, how you can get faster. I have a visitor. This is a future McLaren driver.
That's perfect.
Sorry for the interruption, but maybe a future McLaren driver.
Yeah, but he's got the right colors on. That's perfect.
Okay. But anyway, yeah, brake pedals I think are fantastic for that, and a force feedback wheel. I think you can. A direct drive wheel might help a little bit, but at the end of the day, I couldn't agree with Corey more. It comes down to seat time.
So you think brakes are important in this game? I didn't know that. So okay, good to know.
No, we noticed.
Or you could just go slow and never. Oddly enough, that is quite a very effective strategy. When I was racing motorcycles, actually, you can see those pictures. That's I cranked over in some corners out in Utah. But the way to learn to go fast is not using brakes, and you just go slow to anticipate the corner. So you learn lines and corners.
Momentum driving.
Yeah. Yep. Which is very key in those Miata.
That's what I did in the Miata at Laguna Seca. I had to learn to basically use no brakes, because you could have a rental Mustang pass you easily in the straightaways. But if you learned how to keep that thing in momentum in a corner, it was amazing how fast they were. Okay. I'll jump in my gear. I'll tell you what, I've got a Dell PC that I've been super happy with. It's actually kind of an older GPU, but for iRacing, it's run great at frames per second. That's great. My favorite thing is probably my 3-monitor setup. I also have a dedicated kind of rig in my office, but having the 3 monitors is an incredibly immersive experience. Actually, so immersive that my mother-in-law took a little practice on the track over the weekend, and it gave her motion sickness like she'd been on a roller coaster. So it is really immersive. Like, it actually makes you feel, as the track's going by you, being able to also have that awareness of cars next to you, I think is crazy important.
And and for me, I got an MSI laptop, which is doing the business really well. And I've got another laptop alongside, which is helping me monitor the dashboards and making sure that everyone's sending the data in on a little portable screen at the side, which is great. It's really useful. But for me, the favorite bit of kit is my very vintage Logitech steering wheel. So it's coming up to 12 years old now, and it's still doing the business, even after it's been sat in a cupboard for the last 6 years, brought out of retirement, especially for the virtual race to conf, and still doing me justice around the track. So it's certainly something that I'm quite proud of having with me.
So obviously Splunk is a big part of this, and not only are we collecting data to help us become better drivers and to learn, and obviously to understand how we can do more with the data everything platform, but this is also the virtual race to conf, and conf is only 9 days away. So Steiny, what are you excited for with conf this year?
Ooh, well,
and I guess because you're going to be in the podium, this is the second time in the podium, you're probably going to have to think of more things that you're excited about, right? So what's the second most thing you're excited about this year?
Yeah, I did mention before, I'm excited to see what else we're doing in terms of the efforts around observability, and APM, which is a huge push for us with all the acquisition of single effects and things of that nature. So that's going to be exciting. I'd have to say, I'll research a bit more to see what else is going to be driving the excitement, to be honest. I'm very interested to see customer participation. I want to see how it's going to play out. And if I'm being completely transparent, I need to understand how that's going to work, because our keynote sessions, really, to take that one step further, our breakout sessions are always great. Customers love those, but I'm a huge fan of keynote sessions because we often talk about product releases and things of that nature. So I'm interested to see what we're going to be doing for the keynote sessions.
Westy, what about you?
So shameless plug, I'm really excited for the SBL Rehab breakout talk, mainly because I'm giving it. So showing how you can debug your searches using an app, because I spend so much time trying to find problems in my searches. I thought I'd make an app to do it. Like Jason said, the keynotes are always great. Seeing what's coming along, specifically for me, because I love dashboarding and visualizing the data. What's going to be coming out with the new dashboarding framework as well is something I'm excited specifically to see and get hold of and make use of.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. If you haven't checked out the SPL Rehab app, I have it. Westy did a brilliant job. I use it all the time for searches that don't work. It really is insightful. It's on Splunk based. Check it out. Provide feedback, but it's a really cool app. Corey, what are you excited about?
Well, I'm excited to partner up with this whole crew here, the Big Data Beard team, to talk about our session. Ladies and gentlemen, Splunk your engines. It'll be a talk on all the things we've learned, not only from a racing perspective, but also from a Splunk perspective on getting data in, and from just a data narrative. Why understanding the story behind the data is so incredibly important to project success. So excited about that. I'm also looking forward to some of the experience things we've got going on. So we'll be releasing more information about that in the days ahead on how you can participate in some of this fun with us.
Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. One last question. Anybody you'd like to thank for making this possible for you all today, and within that?
Big Data
I'm going to
Beard.
jump in. I'll jump in real quick. I want to say a gigantic thank you to 3 of you on this call. No offense, Jason. Kyle, Tom West, Brett, you guys are incredible. The work you've put in the months leading up to this event to build the ability for us to get data in, to make meaningful dashboards, to drive operations and build sponsorship buy-in for this project to where we could deliver this really fun, exciting project that I know a lot of people are excited about leading up to it, and the excitement is just growing. So I want to say a huge thank you to the 3 of you. You're amazing. I count you friends, and it's an incredible honor to work alongside you.
Yeah, guys, I actually was going to say the same thing. I couldn't underscore Corey's comments enough. Honestly, as somebody, as the dumb sales guy who comes in and actually just gets to have fun and throw down some laps in a simulator for work, it's there. I am fully aware of the tremendous workloads that go behind the scenes to get these things done and answer the same question 100 times and build the docs and do all of that stuff. And I've run leagues on iRacing before, and just 5 friends trying to get a Le Mans race done is a lot of work. So to do this with people who have no experience is tremendous. So a huge thank you to all of you for making this fun, and actually we can execute on something exciting. So
love it.
Thank you. And for me, I absolutely want to echo everything that's been said there as well. It's been great working alongside. It was great working alongside for the road trip to Conf last year, having a great time as well this year, making this possible. And the other thanks that I'd like to give out is to the team at Hippo Digital, because they for putting that car together, especially the paint job on that. It's something that I'm really proud of driving around the track. So yeah, the team there have done a great job.
Great. Well, congratulations again, you guys. Thanks again to Splunk, our sponsor for today's race, and we'll see you out there tomorrow.